Hi everyone, George here, and today is maintenance day. So first thing I'm going to do is maintain the scaper line 60. At first glance, looks super healthy, everything's growing in nicely. However, if we take a close look at this bottom left-hand corner, you can no doubt see that pretty significant staghorn algae. And it's really interesting, it's the only area in the whole aquarium that we're seeing that. And I'm not sure what it is. I think it must be to do with circulation or CO2 or a combination of both. It's interesting that there's a huge area here where there's no plant growth either. So it's either a dead spot or just a very big contrast in nutrients or CO2 hitting that spot there. So there's a few options what we can do to kind of treat the algae. I'm not a big fan of using chemicals. I can't afford to put loads more amino shrimp in there. And what I will do is probably adjust the flow kind of direction from the filters. I'm running 2 filters on here at the moment. And it's very interesting actually, I just noticed. You can see some staghorn algae building up on the hole at the top of that filter nozzle. So that's interesting. So it seems that staghorn algae might be directly related to flow circulation. So really interesting. This is actually fitted to the secondary filter here, which is maturing, ready when I do a new escape here, forthcoming soon. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to manually remove it from the plants themselves. What I'm going to do is actually remove all of the plants which have the algae on it. So if we consider the actual aesthetics of the scape, it's a little bit kind of monotone in my opinion. Just got this solid kind of linear carpet going along the front here. Looks a little bit boring. So what I'm going to actually do is remove all of the plants. There's the Marseillais hirsuta there and the ranunculus. I think it's actually spread over all the way here. You can see, yeah, even some on the crypts. So I'm going to remove all of the infected leaves. This is going to leave a completely bare area of soil here. Now what you could do is just replant that. You could actually split up some healthy portions of plants there, trim off some runners and replant there. But like I said, I think this foreground area is quite boring. So what I am going to do is actually remove the top layer of soil, maybe even all of the soil around this corner here, and actually add some cosmetic sand. I think that's going to add a lovely kind of contrast and variation in colour, texture, and affect the whole composition quite significantly in a nice way. So yeah, that's what we'll do today. So top tip is actually turn off the filters. So I can just do that with this one switch here. Turns both filters off. And the reason for that is we don't want the circulating water to pick up any of the floating infected leaves, because the algae is going to potentially be spread around the whole aquarium. So just by trimming the leaves, allowing those to float to the surface, we can remove those no problem. Okay, so we've cut away and removed most of the infected area here. I trimmed right down to the root so the whole plant could lift up to the surface, hopefully with all of the algae attached. Just a quick one on algae, it is a sign that something isn't quite right in the aquarium. So it's a good opportunity to learn, figure out what's actually caused the algae and address hopefully the cause. Otherwise it's just going to keep coming back again. So I'm pretty convinced it's something to do with the circulation. So we talked about that earlier, so I'll have a look at that in more detail later. But for now, we've cleared most of the infected leaves out. Now it's time to siphon away this corner of soil here. That's going to leave us with almost a bare bottom corner, hopefully. I might actually get a couple of credit cards just to kind of give a boundary around, so to make it easier and neater to siphon it all away. Otherwise it's all going to kind of slide underneath. So I'll do that next, and then we can add our cosmetic sand. So that's the bottom corner kind of as I wanted. You can see the credit card has slipped away, but that's okay. Now we're going to add our cosmetic sand. This is Weo Canyon sand, so it's a very attractive kind of orangey light brown tan colour. Various grain sizes, I really like this. And so just simply put it into a little jug like this, and then using the jug obviously we can pour that in nice and slowly. Okay, as you can see, the sand has caused quite a lot of clouding in the water. Ideally I would have rinsed that first time I've ever used this sand in a live kind of full aquascape. I've only used it installing in a dry scape usually. There are some sort of sediment that's collected on the Marsilea leaves as well, so I'd like to remove that. But all this will be fine because we're going to do a huge water change, and that's really important. You know, we want to be doing any kind of follow-up from a large maintenance session should be done with a huge water change, because that's going to dilute any of the waste organics that have been allowed to leach into the water column. So, you know, there will be loads and loads of staghorn algae spores all around this aquascape now, so it's important that we dilute that as much as possible. Not all of it will be removed by the filter. So yeah, I'm going to do probably an 80% water change, and then maybe another one after that as well, just because it was so dirty obviously, and potentially full of algae. So that's most of the water change or removed obviously. You can see all the floating plants full of the algae here. This soil is going to want to keep rolling onto that sand, which is going to be very annoying, and that's going to happen more if you have shrimp, etc. So what is a good idea is to use a kind of barrier of stones or pebbles, just to look natural, but also to act as a barrier to prevent the migration of those soil pellets onto the beautiful sand there. So I'll have a little rummage around in the garden. I'm sure I've got some Dragonstone, which I think is going to suit the colour of this canyon sand perfectly. So I'll do that now, and I'll come back and we can make a little wall, and then we can siphon off any kind of offending soil granules later with a smaller hose. Okay, so I've got some small pieces of Dragonstone here. I've given it a really good wash because it does tend to be coated in like a clayey soil type substance, which can really cloud the water. So the idea now is to use this as a barrier, like I say. We can actually push it into the sand and the soil, and that's going to really hopefully stop that soil from migrating onto the sand. So we actually have kind of two different distinct colours of the Dragonstone. It's got like a orangey and a brown, so we can use that to our advantage. We can kind of mix it up a little bit, just to make it look a little bit more kind of natural. So you normally start off with the biggest, most dominant piece, and it's worth paying attention to actually how you position it as well, not just shove it in there any old how, but try to make it look natural. So push it in there. And then we've got another kind of brown wall with a brown piece here. Let's have that go in here. Now, Dragonstone is a popular aquascaping material. Doesn't affect the water chemistry at all, like mini landscape rock or Sirius stone, which is more of a limestone based material. The smallest piece here. Pop that in there, and then we have one more piece here, which I'll just add behind, like so. And then we have our little kind of wall barrier that's hopefully going to prevent that soil from migrating. So we'll carry on with the water change. Just one more thing before we do that. It's really important to keep these plants nice and moist, prevent them from drying out. What can happen is once a plant's adapted to its underwater growth, which of course these have by now, they actually are quite fragile. You know, plants underwater, they actually physically change their whole physiology and become, you know, much more adept to grow underwater. So they're a lot more kind of floppy. They don't need to support their body weight, of course, in the air like an emergent plant. And another thing that they do is dry out very, very easily. And if they're allowed to dry out, this can really damage the plant tissue, and they can therefore struggle to grow, and it can even kill them if they dry out too much. Some species are more delicate than others, but I would just always recommend keeping them moist if possible. So just an old, cheap garden spray, houseplant sprayer, whatever you've got to hand. Make sure it obviously just contains aquarium water and nothing else. And I'll do this on all of the plants. And if I'm doing a large water change, it's something I always do, so top tip for you. Okay, so that is the job complete. Removed all of the plants with the algae attached, put a little barrier there, put the sand in, and hopefully we're going to address the cause, which I think is flow. I think there's actually too much flow because we've got 2 biomasters on here, and it's really interesting that the staghorn algae is appearing on the outlet of that nozzle. So I'm actually going to I'm actually going to remove one of the filters. So that's going to cut the flow in half. I'll remove the filter with the direct, the Aquario type nozzle there, which is actually causing a very high velocity of water because it's such a restricted hole versus the lily pipe there. So I think just by doing that, that is going to help. Of course, we hopefully won't see any staghorn algae now on the sand. It normally appears on plants. Just keep an eye on it, keep up with my regular water changes, keep the pre-filter clean on the biomasters, which I do once a week with the water changes. Feed the plants regularly with good liquid fertiliser. I'm using the Scapoline daily fertiliser here. And keep an eye on CO2 levels. That is a very big trigger for algae if you have unstable or too low a CO2 level. So hopefully all of those things combined are going to result in a relatively algae-free tank. I mean, there is always background levels of algae in a planted aquarium. You know, you're dealing with lighting, you're dealing with nutrients, and all the things that make algae. But the idea is we have healthy plants, enough of them, and they help to kind of consume the resources that the algae require. So if you think about algae and plants always in competition with each other, the more plants you have, the better you look after those plants, the more chance of success you'll get and the less nuisance algae you get. So I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Just a quick vlog. Just thought I'd record something whilst I was doing this maintenance practice. Hopefully you've learned something. I think it actually looks better, don't you? You know, that monotone kind of effect at the front looked a bit boring. I'm actually considering doing something else with the foreground as well. Maybe add some different types of foreground plants amongst the Marsilea hirsuta. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm not putting fish in here. It's designed to be a shrimp breeding tank. We don't actually have any... It is a live family home, so there is background noise going on, so I don't apologise for that. We don't have any shrimp breeding at the moment, but hopefully they will do at some point in the future. And I am excited to set the tank up next door, probably, maybe next week. No, in fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in that tank next door in another video, because it's actually a super cool event, and I'm actually taking the tank down to London. So I'll let you know all about that in the next vlog, which will be next week. All right, thank you for watching. Take care. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.